Hi, welcome to Hastings VO. Today we're going to take a quick look at EQ for voice actors. Let's get started. Okay, hello and welcome to Hastings VO, where we talk about all things VO, from the audio to the audition to the booking. And today I want to just briefly talk about what we're trying to achieve as voice actors with an equalizer and how to go about doing that. Okay? EQ, an equalizer. When you look at it at first, it can seem intimidating. It can be confusing. But if we break it down into 4 parts, it can make it a lot easier for you to hone in on what you're trying to fix, where what you're trying to fix exists, and then how to fix it. And what I'm talking about, when you think about an equalizer, you can think about it as 3 bands to begin with: low frequencies, high frequencies, and mid-range frequencies. The first section is the low frequencies. So here's my raw audio, and it's going to blow your mind. I mean, it's absolutely stellar. The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance. I mean, voice acting at its finest is what that was. So that's the raw audio. These are just the low frequencies in that audio.
The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance.
Right? So it's a lot of those low frequencies, subsonic frequencies that you may not even be hearing. You're certainly not hearing them if you're on your computer speakers or your phone speaker. And those go from roughly 20 hertz up to roughly 300 hertz, right? The high frequencies are going to be all your S's and T's and ch sounds, right? Your sibilant sounds. So let's listen and listen specifically to the T's and the S's.
The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance.
Right? So that's those frequencies. But what I also want you to notice is inside of these 2 realms, there isn't a lot of information because the human voice doesn't really live there. Where the human voice lives is going to be in this mid-range. The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance. So this is where the voice lives. But what people tend to do is grab a lot of frequencies and do this and scoop out the middle. The goal of a voice actor. And what ends up happening is you suck the life out of your voice. Out of the sound of your voice. We need these frequencies. They're very, very important. And this comes to the point of why I believe in small incremental changes rather than big changes. What do I mean by that? What I mean by small incremental changes is nothing over 5 decibels. So plus or minus 5 decibels. And the higher you go or the lower you go, the thinner I want your bandwidth to be. If I'm boosting 1K, at like 1 or 2, I don't mind a wide bandwidth. But if I start getting up into the 3 to 5 range, look at how many frequencies I'm affecting, right? I'm affecting all of these frequencies and all of these in the middle here pretty substantially. So what I want to do is I want to trim up my cue a little bit so that I'm not affecting so many frequencies and I'm staying on point and really just affecting the frequencies I want to affect. Same with cuts. If I'm getting down into 5, I don't want to do this because now I'm losing all of this information. So that's what I mean by small incremental changes to the EQ. So we've got our 3 bands. Well, I said 4 initially. And the reason I say 4 is because I want to break this, because it's so important, I want to break this mid-range down into 2 other sections. And so those 2 sections are going to be low mids and high mids. So if you'll notice, the low mids go from 300 hertz up to about 1,000 hertz or 1K. And the high mids go from 1,000 hertz or 1K to 4,000 hertz or 4K. And let's listen to those now. And what I want you to sort of start doing is apply words to how these things sound. And so for me, low mids sound like a cardboard box. They just have that boxy sound. And it's a sound you're probably going to be familiar with if you work in a very small room, because those are the frequencies in smaller rooms that build up, is those low mid frequencies. So you might be finding that you're going to be reaching for some of these frequencies from the 200 to 1K range to cut. Again, be judicious. Don't go crazy. But these are what low mids sound like.
The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance.
Okay? Those are those low mid frequencies. Now, high mid frequencies are, to me, sound like a really small speaker. I think of when I play video games and there's like an old radio in the background or whatever. That's what this sounds like to me.
The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance.
There's a little bit of the T's and S's and CH's in there, but I'm hearing mostly my A's and E's, right? So when we get used to these two bands in particular, right? If we can get these two bands to find balance, most of the rest of it's going to work itself out. So again, thinking about it this way, this is the area where you're probably going to be living with regard to your voiceover. Again, there's crossover here between 4K and 6K, and there's crossover here between 300 and 150. Where you might be, working. If you hear a low mid and it's not in the 300 to 1K range, it might be lower in the 150 range, and this might be higher up and towards 6K. No hard and fast rules. But, that's how we should be thinking about all of this, is in these four bands: lows, low mids, high mids, and highs. And one more thing I want to talk about is, remember, the first thing that I'm doing in my signal chain is I'm applying a low pass and a high pass filter. And the reason I'm doing that is to get those subsonic frequencies and those supersonic frequencies out of the mix to begin with, before we ever get started. That way I don't have to mess with them afterwards, right? It sets the parameters for my audio. So watch what happens when I do that. When I do that, what happens is it suddenly makes these low frequencies, because I usually set this to about 75. It sets these low frequencies notice we have a much smaller area to worry about. We don't have to worry about anything from 70 on down. And then if we do the same thing up here, we set this to, I don't know, I usually go about 10K, somewhere around 10K. Again, we have a smaller area to worry about. Now we're just going from 4K to 10K, and we're only going from 300 down to 80 or 100. So, when we sort of define the parameters with our filters, now it's a lot easier for us to know where to look when we're looking for those low frequencies or those high frequencies. So let's get started. And with this EQ here, we're going to adjust this sound to sound better. So let's first listen to our filters. Let's set them to about 65 and a half at 12 dB per octave, and then set this to about 95 at 6 dB per octave. Because the higher frequencies are important, I don't want to turn them off. I'm not trying to chop them off like this at 48 decibels per octave. I don't want to do that. That's gonna sound really unnatural. But setting it at 6 dB per octave with a really soft slope, all I'm doing is turning the volume down on these frequencies up here, so that they're not in your face. So let's listen to we'll do the high frequencies first. So listening for the S's and the T's, right? To hear them hopefully go a little softer, so that they're not stabbing you in the ear. The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance. Okay? The microphone you use, the room you're in, and the voice that you have are all going to dictate how you achieve that balance. Let's listen to that section right there with the how you achieve that balance with it off. All going to dictate how you achieve that balance. So all going to dictate how you achieve that balance. So this seems like there might be a little too much. I might be cutting away too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to bring this up to 10K. I'm going to bring it up to 11.5K apparently. Bring it up to 11K and listen to it again. All going to dictate how you achieve that balance. All going to dictate how you achieve that balance. So what I'm trying to do is I just want to I don't want to lose the ch part of it. I want to lose the t part of it. right? I want to lose the really sharp frequencies. All going to dictate how you achieve that balance. And what I found at 9.5 was that I was cutting off too much of the ch sound. So this doesn't sound too horrible. I'm going to pull it down to about 10.9. All going to dictate how you achieve that balance. Cool. Again, I'm not trying to solve every problem. And I can bring a little bit more of this high frequency back in if I need to, but I just want to make sure I'm taking out those supersonic frequencies. Now let's work on the low frequencies, right? We originally set this to 64.5, so let's listen to that now. The goal of a voice actor, and what I'm listening for, by the way, is sort of that really low, like any of the really low chest sounds. I just want to feel it. I don't even really want to hear this when I turn it on with the low frequencies. I want to feel it more, just sort of, tighten up a little bit. The goal of a voice actor, while they're using EQ and filters, is to achieve balance. The microphone. I broke my own rule and I moved it while I didn't turn it off. Again, I'm all about turning it off, making my changes, turning it on. I'm not about sweeping frequencies. Sweeping frequencies, to my mind, is a very bad habit to get into, because what I'm doing when I'm turning it off and turning it on is I'm comparing it to the original audio. Right? I'm comparing it to the original problem. When you're sweeping frequencies, and what I mean by that is boosting a frequency and going like this with it and listening to it, what you're doing is you're creating a problem that wasn't there before that you now suddenly need to solve. Whereas when I compare this, like turning it off and turning it on, I'm comparing to the actual real audio that's there. When I'm sweeping, I'm making a problem that I have to solve. And my ears are going to compensate for that and lie to me. Any frequency boosted 20 decibels is going to sound horrible. So, I don't agree with doing that. I prefer to turn it off, turn it on. So I'm going to listen again to just the low end. The goal of a voice actor, while they're using EQ and filters, is to achieve balance. The microphone you use, the room you're in, and the voice that you have are all going to dictate how you achieve that balance. Too much, right? Because every microphone is different. Every room is different, and every voice is different. The goal of a voice actor, while they're using EQ and filters, is to achieve balance. The microphone you use, the room you're in. So now I think I have a good place I have good definition. I've defined where my audio is. I think I've cleaned this up enough. I mean, there could be an argument made where I bring it down a little bit more. The goal of a voice actor, while they're using EQ and filters, is to achieve balance. The microphone you use. I don't mind having a little bit of the low end in there, but I want to make sure that those subsonic frequencies are out. And those include, by the way, the low rumble of cars going by or whatever. So this cleans up your signal before it goes anywhere. So this is the first thing that I'm going to do is do that. So now let's get into where in this audio we're hearing an issue, if any. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start doing what's called critical listening. I'm not listening to the whole sound. I'm just going to pick out a particular band, either the lows, the low mids, the high mids, or the highs. And I'm just going to be listening for that. And first, for me, generally where I listen first is in the low end. And we've already adjusted that. So I'm now going to be listening in the low mids. Now, the low mids, as you'll recall, live in this area here.
The goal of a voice actor, while they're using EQ and filters,
right,
is to achieve balance.
So it's those boxy frequencies. So let's listen and see if we can hear too much or not enough of those frequencies. The goal of a voice actor, while they're using EQ and filters, is to achieve balance. The microphone you use, the room you're in, and the voice that you have are all going to dictate how you achieve that balance. So I'm not hearing too much in that area. I'm not necessarily hearing it out of balance in that low mid range. The goal of a voice actor, while they're using EQ and filters, is to achieve balance. And the reason I'm not hearing it, it's in the signal. I can definitely hear that low mid range is there. But what I'm hearing more than anything on this pass, the goal of a voice actor, because now what I'm listening for now are those high mid frequencies. So again, just when we're starting to get to the T's and the S's, the sibilant sounds. We're listening to the cleanness of a fricative sound, the f, right? Those sorts of sounds. I want those to be clean. I don't want them to sound like this, right? I want them to have a nice clean sound to them. So I'm listening to those frequencies now. And what I'm noticing is that they're not very well represented. The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance. I want you to also notice these waves in here, I'm not even paying attention to them. I'm listening. Because these can be misleading. Because according to this, there's way too much of this low mid-range. The goal of a voice actor, there's a lot of while they're energy using there, EQ and filter, and there isn't a lot up here. If I was paying attention to this, the first thing I might do is I might go like this. The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance. But what I feel that that's done is suck the whole low-end life out of it. The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance. The microphone you use, the room you're in, that doesn't sound good to me. That is not the solution I'm looking for. The solution I'm looking for is more along the lines of this, wherein, and I want to listen really quick to what the goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters. So it's those high mid frequencies that I want to grab. So high mids are where? From 1K to 4K. So on the higher end, I might go to 3K here. Again, 2 decibels, 3 decibels at a wider Q, a wider bandwidth, so that, because if I were to do this, you're not going to hear it. It's not going to sound like anything because I'm just pushing one specific frequency by 3 decibels. Whereas if I do this, what I'm doing is I'm sort of giving everything a chance to sort of rise up a little bit. So let's listen to how that changes things. And again, now we're listening to the CH sounds, the S's and the T's and the F's and those sorts of things. And we just want to clean them up a little bit. The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance. The microphone you use, the room you're in, and the voice that you have are all going to dictate how you achieve that balance. I think that I might want to move this up a little bit because when I say achieve, I want to hear a little bit more sparkle on that. And I can do this safely knowing I'm not going to be adding in any of those stabby frequencies because I've already taken care of them with my filter. So let's take a listen to this and see if this changes anything. The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance. The microphone you use, the room you're in, and the voice that you have are all going to dictate how you achieve that balance. Let's listen to that. Because I'm to dictate how you achieve that balance. Let's listen to it. Because to dictate how you achieve that balance. Listen to achieve. Listen to achieve, right? To dictate how you achieve that. To dictate how you achieve that balance. To dictate how you achieve that balance. So what we've done now is we've just cleaned up the CH sound, right? Which in turn is going to clean up some of the S's and the T's, but not in the area that's stabbing you in the ear. The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance. The microphone you use, the room you're in, and the voice that you have are all going to dictate how you achieve that balance. And interestingly now, since we've fixed those high frequencies, I think perhaps, and there is interaction between all of the frequencies that are going on inside of your ear, they're all interacting with each other. To me, it may now be the time to pull some of these low mids down. And it sounds in that boxy range, right? The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance. So I'm going to come here to 340, 350. And again, 2 decibels max. And let's see how this sounds with it. The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance. The microphone you use, the room you're in, and the voice that you have are all going to dictate how you achieve that balance. Because every microphone is different. So what's happening? Okay, so what I think is happening here, I think that takes away too much of the low end. I don't like what's happening. The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance. And I think my ears were telling me something wrong. And I assessed it incorrectly. Once I took those low mids out, what I realized was it isn't low mids that I'm hearing. It's the high mids. It's in that 1K range, the radio, the small speaker sound. And so what I'm going to do now is I could go here and I could do this, right? The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ, but to me, that sucks the life out of, because this right here, especially in this 1K range, is where the voice lives, man. That's where, the fundamental frequency of the human voice is right there at that 1K. I don't really want to mess with it. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to trim up my bandwidth on my high frequency, because if it's so wide, what's happening is you'll notice it's boosting this area in here as well. The goal of a voice, so if it's boosting that area as well, if I trim up my Q, my bandwidth, then I'm not affecting those frequencies anymore. I'm still keeping the same center frequency of 4K. The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance. The microphone you use, the room you're in, and the voice that you have are all going to dictate how you achieve that balance. Now, I may push this a little bit higher up towards 5K. Let's listen to that. The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance. The microphone you use, the room you're in, and the voice that you have are all going to dictate how you achieve. I like it better back at the 4K, and trimming this up hasn't solved the problem. Great. The goal of a voice actor, so we'll put it back where it was, about right in here, right? The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance. So maybe the answer is to perhaps either, again, I'm not a big fan of cutting 1K. So what I may do is I may grab a frequency around 1K and put it back into balance that way, right? Grab the frequencies down here, because the 1K is, if we see the 1K as coming up in here in this area, and then these are low down in here, if we build these up to the same level as the 1K, that's achieving the same thing as bringing the 1K down. The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance. The microphone you use, the room you're in, and the voice that you have are all going to dictate how you achieve that balance. This doesn't solve the problem. I might push it a little bit more, 3 decibels. Let's see what happens. The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters. Nope, that doesn't solve the problem either. Okay. The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance. Okay, I think we're getting closer with this. So what I want to do is I might trim up my Q on this and see if I've picked the right center frequency. Right? The goal of a voice, listening to the low, mid, the lows and the low mids. The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance. The microphone you use, the room you're in, and the voice that you have. So what I'm hearing is still a little bit of that boxy sound. So I'm going to pull this down into the low frequencies, into the 100. Right, into those low frequencies, and see if that solves it. The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance. There we go. The microphone you use, the room you're in. Remember, your Q, your bandwidth, wherever your center frequency is great, but your bandwidth is affecting other frequencies around it. And so because this was up here, I'm also affecting 500, 400, and 300 hertz, those boxy frequencies. So I didn't want to make my Q too small, but I want to make sure that I'm only affecting the frequencies I want to affect. So I went down to 100, but I'm also affecting up to 200. The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters, but I'm balancing things out now. But the last thing in the world that I want to do is cut any of this mid-range out. The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ, that sounds hollow to me, and I've lost so much information. The goal of a voice actor while they're using, we're trying, again, to achieve balance. And this is going to sound natural. It's going to cut through a mix, And remember, whoever you're sending this to, your client, an audition or whatever, they can affect it however they want to afterwards. But if you start making big changes and big movements on their behalf, then it's really hard for them to make adjustments. If you're taking a lot of frequencies out, or you're adding, if you're taking a lot of frequencies out, it's difficult for them to necessarily put them back in because they're not there to put back in. So I want to send them as much information as possible in a nice balanced way. And if I'm going to be doing cutting, it's going to be in the lows, the subsonic lows and the supersonic highs. I'm not going to be cutting a whole bunch in here. I do tend to, if I need to, especially if I'm working with somebody in a smaller room, in the 200 to 500 range, I will do small cuts. I will cut maybe like this, right? The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ, just to sort of balance it out a little bit. The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve balance. The microphone you use. Now in here, I don't have a small room, so I'm not concerned with it, but I am hearing it now, and so I might tighten up my bandwidth. The goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and filters is to achieve. Now when I do it now that I've set my bandwidth thin enough that I'm not affecting these frequencies, when I cut this, I feel like I'm losing something. Whereas before it was helping. And both of them are right. It's absolutely correct. If I wanted to, there's no reason that I couldn't have this set back where it was and cut this frequency. The goal of a voice actor, we're almost achieving the same thing, right? Because I've set this the way it is, if you'll notice, it's beginning to truncate my bandwidth here as well. So I can choose to thin my bandwidth, and the goal of a voice actor while they're using EQ and achieve the same result. I hope that makes sense. But I like this. So I'm going to leave it. And now I'm going to put in my compressor, and my compressor is going to make things change. And rather than come back to this EQ, which I know already sounds okay, and I need the compressor to manage the volume of my sound, right? To make sure that I don't get too crazy. It also adds a little bit of tightening to the sound, but it may affect the sound. It may bring up these low frequencies because by the nature of what a compressor does, it might bring up those low frequencies and make them a little bit louder. Well, rather than do this, if my compressor is achieving what I need it to achieve, and by that I mean it's only affecting the loud parts and it's doing its job, but it is imparting a little bit of, it knocks my audio out of balance, I'm not going to come back here and mess with this EQ because this EQ is dictating the sound to that compressor. Remember, signal flow. So it's going from that EQ into that compressor. And because of that, any adjustments I make to this EQ are going to affect how that compressor was working to begin with. And if the compressor was working properly, why would I mess with that when I could just put an EQ after it and EQ the sound? So I hope that helps. We've covered a lot. We've covered the frequency spectrums. We've covered the low frequencies, which go from 20 hertz to around 300 hertz. We have our high frequencies, which go from 20,000 hertz down to 4,000 hertz or 3,000 hertz, somewhere around in that area. And we have our mid-range. We have low mids that go from 300 hertz up to around 1,000 hertz. And we have our high mid frequencies, which go from 1,000 hertz to 4,000 hertz. Listen to these things, right? Take a piece of audio and listen to them to get used to them. Do what's called critical listening. Listen to a piece of audio. Ask yourself, what does it have? Listen first to just the low frequencies, or listen first to just the high, super high frequencies, and know where they are. They're in the S's and the T's and that sort of area. The human voice is an amalgam of all of these frequencies. And every microphone hears these frequencies differently. But always remember that you don't have to cut all the time. Just because something is sticking out doesn't mean you have to cut it. It could mean that you want to lift the frequencies around it. Keep that in mind. And try them all. There is no hard and fast rule. There is no absolute. And play, play, play. Listen, listen, listen. And hopefully that helps, and I'll talk to you again soon. Take it easy.